What's up guys, Romsicle here, and today we are doing a full review of the brand new Huntsman V2 analog from Razer. It is by far their most expensive keyboard at the moment at a whopping $250, which just so happens to be the same amount of money I spent to build my first custom mechanical keyboard. So is this keyboard worth it? Let's find out. So starting off with the design, this is a full-sized layout, so you're getting every feature like the dedicated function keys at the top and the numpad on the right. And I'll just show you guys the entire keyboard just so you know what to expect. It's got a typical Razer design similar to the Huntsman Elite, so there's nothing special here, but there's nothing wrong with that. So this is a low profile keyboard with a black aluminum plate with a plastic base, so all the switches are exposed on the bottom and it also makes it easier to clean. There is a translucent LED strip that wraps all around the keyboard to a certain point for a nice underglow effect, along with a USB pass-through port on the left hand side. And at the back, we do have two braided cables with a cable management strap that lead to a USB-C and USB 3 plug. So you only need to use this single USB-C plug to power the entire keyboard. And if you want to use pass-through, then you'll need to plug in the other USB 3 plug. It's not required, but it'll let you use the keyboard to its full potential. Also included inside the box is a USB-C to USB 3.0 adapter. This is just in case your computer isn't up to date enough to have USB-C, so you can just use this adapter and plug it into a USB 3 port. And on the bottom we have a bunch of rubber feet and adjustable kickstand feet that can be flat or at a 6 or 9 degree angle per your preference. Now at the front of the keyboard we have this metal contact to connect the provided wrist rest to get the RGB working there as well, because the translucent RGB strip is also available here to extend the underglow portion. So this wrist rest is an upgrade from the previous iterations. First, you still have the same plush synthetic leather on the top that is very comfortable to use, and the edges are all nice and seamless instead of the thick frames found on the other keyboards. It just adds a touch of luxury seeing the well-flowing design that surround the wrist rest. And then you have the excessive amount of rubber feet found on the bottom. As for the interfaces, we have the LED indicators and the backlit playback controls. These are tactile buttons that do require a bit of extra force to press on them, but I do like the rigidity of it and the sound. We also have a textured volume wheel with a mute button on the top. The LED brightness changes as you turn up and down the volume, and it will stay red if it is muted. And this wheel is very ergonomically comfortable to use compared to the V3, but there is a little bit of wobble here. One thing I don't understand is the default settings of the volume wheel. You scroll up to decrease volume and you scroll down to increase volume. I get that with the volume dial you typically want to go clockwise to increase the volume and counterclockwise to decrease the volume, but you can't even do that with this keyboard because if you try to do that, the numpad just ends up getting in the way. Nonetheless, you can change this in Synapse. It's not an issue per se, but it is a very weird default setting. There's not much to say about the LED indicators, but what's great about these labels here is that it's made with a glossy black. So whenever you're using the keyboard, it actually blends into the plate, giving it an extra clean aesthetic. Moving back to the forefront, we do get some thickened PBT OEM profile double shot keycaps that are slightly textured for a grippier and thockier typing experience. And underneath that is the main attraction of this board, the Razer optical analog switches in a black color. So let's listen to how the keyboard sounds. So as you just heard, this keyboard has a very nice thock noise that's very satisfying to listen to. But you're also getting a lot of audible ping noises, and I can guarantee you will be able to hear these ping noises while typing or gaming without a headset. If you want to listen to what a cheap optical switch sounds like, you can check out the video right here. It may be cheap, but it sounds even better than these switches right here. So what is an analog switch? Well, it means that each key is pressure sensitive and can essentially replicate the movements of a joystick. We also saw this in the SteelSeries Apex Pro with their OmniPoint switches, as well as on the Wu-Tang 1 keyboard. So if you want to walk a little slowly, you just need to press the key halfway, and if you want to go full speed, you just press the key all the way down. So essentially, you're getting two actuations in one key. It can also have custom actuation distances. So in the Synapse program, you can choose each switch to have a 1.5 to 3.6mm actuation distance, as well as customizing the release distance as well. Say you have a throw animation within a game. You press down the switch to arm your grenade, and within 0.1 millimeters of lifting off of that key, you can then throw the grenade, so it could potentially give you a very good gaming advantage. But keep in mind the shortest actuation distance is still 1.5 millimeters, which on paper still isn't as good as some Gateron optical switches and the Razer Red switches. One thing that Razer doesn't tell anyone about is the weight of these switches. These kids are heavy. From my unscientific testing, I was able to figure out that the bottom out force was around 63 to 65 grams, which is considerably heavier than any Razer switch and any other switch dedicated for gaming. So your fingers will definitely need to take some time to get used to the extra weight, and since it is a linear switch, the chances of you bottoming it out is pretty high. And for regular typing, it was tough for me, so it's probably going to be tough for you too. And last but not least, we have the LED lighting. The switch lights are PCB mounted, while the switch itself has a translucent piece to distribute the light a little better. And ever since Razer switched their font, it hasn't been as bright as it used to be, but still isn't weak by any means in the dark. As shown before, we also get a ring of light underneath for a nice underglow. It doesn't show much on a black mousepad, but it will definitely look brighter on a white tabletop for sure. All color combinations, effects, speeds, reactions can all be set through Razer Synapse, and it's a very easy program to use. All the other features available on this keyboard is found directly on Razer Synapse. You can map your keyboard to work like a controller, or map it as a joystick for simulators. You can launch programs, make shortcuts, text macros, and hypershift, which is basically a fancier way of saying function shortcuts, and all that is set within the program. And lighting controls is a no-brainer with Chroma Studio with its interactive and instant application. Now this wouldn't be a proper Razer keyboard review if we don't get into the issues. This is a $250 keyboard after all, so we're going to get super critical here. So first off, let's go back to the switches. Honestly, the whole analog input thing is pretty useless for majority of the gamer population. It only makes sense with simulations, single-player indie games, and maybe racing games. With any FPS games, especially in competitive, walking slowly is rarely beneficial unless you're going for a stealth flank, and that's not nearly as common as running full speed. Not to mention, you have to train your fingers to press the key slowly to maintain that slow moving effect. For example, in Warzone and especially in Apex, you always want to be running full speed for maximum mobility. And if you want to walk slower, you either stop holding your sprint key or you press the crouch button. Crouching helps you walk slower and gives you cover. So the whole analog input thing is completely useless when you have a key that gives you cover, helps you walk slower, and you don't need to retrain your fingers to press on a key slowly to get that same effect. And if you think about it, with an analog switch, you're technically moving slower at the initial key press because it's ramping up to full speed instead of going full speed immediately. So reaction time wise, it's not very beneficial for gameplay at all. And secondly, these switches are heavy, and of course it's to help make it easier to adjust your key press distances for your analog inputs. But if you're not using these analog inputs, it just adds more stress onto the hands because of the spring weights, making it more difficult to have longer game sessions. And the whole custom actuation distance thing is pretty cool, but it'd be more beneficial for gamers to choose some Razer Red switches or some Gateron optical switches if you really want that 1mm actuation distance. And finally, let's talk about the price. Razer, $250 for a keyboard? That's borderline insanity. Right now, at the time of filming, you can get yourself a Black Widow Elite for only $100 on Amazon, and the only thing you would be missing would be the proprietary optical switches and USB-C. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever for anyone to get this keyboard. If your life is dedicated to gaming, you're not going to get it. If it's dedicated to indie games, you're not going to get it. If it's dedicated to racing games, you're not going to get it, and especially if it's dedicated to simulators, you're definitely not getting this keyboard. So who is this keyboard for? Just get yourself a regular optical switch keyboard and a controller for a third of the price. Take this for example, SK68 with optical switches, Easy SMX wireless controller, altogether $100. They're cheap, they work great, sound great, and they don't need to be combined to cost an extra $150. So the conclusion is this. Nobody should be paying this much for a gaming keyboard, especially if its main selling point is a feature that doesn't even benefit most gamers. It's literally a Huntsman Elite with some small physical changes, heavier analog switches, and an extra $150 price tag. Absolutely ridiculous. Let me know what you guys think about this keyboard. Am I overreacting? Can you guys think of other ways to make this keyboard worth paying the hefty price? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.